voice. Now, when I saw that Trevor's piano solo today was going to be Chariots of Fire, I thought, I see your Chariots of Fire, and I raise you a different film. So, I'm sure at some point, most of us have heard of the film genre spaghetti westerns. Have we any fans? Anyone like an old spaghetti western? Oh my gosh, I have like Clint Eastwood box sets in the house. Well, on this very day, in 1966, the film director, an Italian gentleman called C0009, sadly passed away, age 60. And he was the guy who popularized the spaghetti western. And he had a hugely successful dollar trilogy that was released. So it started with a fistful of dollars, then for a few dollars more, and finally, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And I thought today's sermon should be all about the good, the bad, and the ugly in 1966 and in 2023. So, there were definitely some good things in the world of film in 1966, but what about elsewhere? Does anyone remember anything specific about that year?
World Cup winning.
What was that?
World Cup winning.
Funny you should mention that. I don't know if anyone's aware of this little known fact, but apparently in 1966, England won the World Cup. Who knew? And the famous commentary line from BBC pundit Kenneth Wolstenholme was, of course, "There's people on the pitch, they think it's all over, it is now." Well, Kenneth, how wrong could you have been? Because it's never been over ever since they won it. We've never heard the end of it. Meanwhile, at home here, Northern Ireland, in 1966, the Ford Cortina Mark II was flooding the roads. Did anyone ever own a Cortina? No. Charles Stewart, the man, the myth, the legend. What colour? Blue. Did you do the arm out the way? Yeah? Brilliant. And in 1966 in Ulster, the Ulster Tatler was born to keep us all abreast of culture and events of the day with the IT crowd in Northern Ireland. That's some of the good. Sadly, however, those years were also very blighted by war. So in 1966, the Vietnam War continued. Despite hundreds of thousands of protesters the world over attending anti-war demonstrations. And of course, we had many famous people adding their voice in opposition. For example, Muhammad Ali, who refused conscription to the US Army and narrowly avoided prison as a result. At home, of course, in the 60s, the mid to late 60s in Northern Ireland, we were sadly entering one of the darkest periods in our history with the beginning of the Troubles, the mounting civil tensions, the murders, the shootings, and the growing civil unrest. And how thankful are we for the Good Friday Agreement? Now, for the ugly. In 1966, I've chosen the world of fashion. Because, well, I suppose it depends on your perspective. Mini skirts and hot pants? Anyone? Come on, who owns some? What was that, Val? is nodding, yes. And also, there was a very strange space age theme around that time too, with all things silver. People running about looking like a cross between a Doctor Who special and a I don't know what. It was very strange. So yeah, maybe fashion in the mid-60s, we can maybe just let that stay where it is. I mean, obviously, this clergy chic, like where would you get it? This is the way forward. Just buy a cheap suit and throw it on a Sunday. What about a beehive? Who is going to sit here today and try to justify a beehive? What was that? Hairdo. Anyone have one? Charles? No beehives. They can just stay in the 60s, I think. But what about today? What about 2023? What's the good, the bad, and the ugly? So let's start with the ugly, get it out of the way. Now they say never get rid of any clothing that's out of fashion because it'll be back in fashion soon enough, like Violet's psychedelic pink hot pants that she's going to wear for you all next week. There's a TV programme, Stranger Things. Anyone seen it? Yes, it's brilliant. I recommend it. And so the 80s are all back. So we've got like baggy, high-waisted mummy jeans and colour block sweatshirts and, you know, the music from the 80s is back. We're in full swing. Kate Bush has been at #1. And Top Gun was in our cinemas again. And Walkmans and cassette tapes are now all the rage again. And I swear, if Bobby Ewing walks out of a shower, I'm seeing a doctor. So the 80s are back. And I don't think, in terms of fashion, that's a good thing. What about the bad? Well, thanks to our wonderful current government, we've also seen the 1980s inflation rates back, with the highest rate of inflation since 1982. If only they could not be fashionable and let that stay in 1982. Personally, I feel like penning a little letter to the Tories. You know, I appreciate your fashionista manta, but I prefer 80s things like, oh, I don't know, access to a dentist or free school milk for kids. But who am I? They chose crippling inflation. So there we go, that's the bad. But let's finish, folks, with what's good in 2023. Specifically, what's good in our churches in 2023? Well, since 1725, this denomination, our very own non-subscribing Presbyterians, have proudly led the way for a progressive Christian voice in Ireland. Today, we stand at 35 congregations with an approximate membership of 4,000. And we continue some of our great work undertaken with other organisations, for example, the Irish Council of Churches. And we maintain our close affiliation with the General Assembly of Unitarians and Free Christians as well. And as I say, I was very proud to have trained with them. And what about this church? This church continues to maintain its proud and centrally important role in Northern Ireland. Once referred to as the Cathedral of the denomination, All Souls continues to campaign for issues of social justice. It continues to be an avid supporter of the arts. It promotes values of religious tolerance and inclusion. This church, where I began my journey towards ministry over 10 years ago, must continue that good work in 2023 and beyond. Because at a time when other mainstream denominations appear to promote a lack of tolerance, this church must continue to challenge. At a time when war and corruption and political uncertainty and hardship affect so many people, this church must continue to challenge. It must continue to stand up and be heard above the clanging cymbals of religious intolerance and fundamentalism. At a time when there is too much Christian indifference to increasing poverty and targeted oppression, the message of this beloved community must resound clearly. And each and every person who is proud to be a member of this fine church, of this denomination, must protect the liberal Christian witness, not just for this generation, but for all that follow. I leave you today with a quote from a gentleman called Marcus Borg in a book entitled The God We Never Knew. And he said, "The dream of God is a social and political vision of a world of justice and peace, in which human beings do not hurt or destroy, oppress or exploit one another. It is the dream expressed with many images and by many voices." Amen. We will now receive our offering.